South Atlantic tropical cyclones are unusual weather events that occur in the Southern Hemisphere. Strong wind shear, which disrupts the formation of cyclones, as well as a lack of weather disturbances favorable for development in the South Atlantic Ocean, make any strong tropical system extremely rare, and Catarina in 2004 was the only South Atlantic hurricane in history. Typically, storms develop during the months from November through to April. However, tropical cyclogenesis can occur any time in the year. Since 2011, the Brazilian Navy Hydrographic Center has started to assign names to tropical and subtropical systems in this basin, when they have sustained wind speeds of at least 65 km/h. Below is a list of notable South Atlantic tropical and subtropical cyclones. Theories concerning infrequency of occurrence. Until April 1991, it was thought that tropical cyclones did not develop within the South Atlantic. Very strong vertical wind shear in the troposphere is considered a deterrent. The intertropical convergence zone drops 1 to 2 degrees south of the equator, not far enough from the equator for the Coriolis force to aid development. Water temperatures in the tropics of the southern Atlantic are cooler than those in the tropical North Atlantic. During April 1991, these assertions were proven false when the United States National Hurricane Center reported that a tropical cyclone had developed over the eastern Atlantic. In subsequent years, a few systems were suspected to have the characteristics needed to be classified as a tropical cyclone, including in March 1994 and January 2004. During March 2004, an extratropical cyclone formally transitioned into a tropical cyclone and made landfall on Brazil, after becoming a Category 2 hurricane on the Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale. While the system was threatening the Brazilian state of Santa Catarina, a newspaper used the headline, "Furacão Catarina," which was originally presumed to mean Furacão threatening Catarina. After international presses started monitoring the system, Hurricane Catarina has formally been adopted. At the 6th WMO International Workshop on Tropical Cyclones in 2006, it was questioned if any subtropical or tropical cyclones had developed within the South Atlantic before Catarina. It was noted that suspect systems had developed in January 1970, March 1994, January 2004, March 2004, May 2004, February 2006 and March 2006. It was also suggested that an effort should be made to locate any possible systems using satellite imagery and synoptic data. However, it was noted that this effort may be hindered by the lack of any geostationary imagery of the basin before 1966. A study was subsequently performed and published during 2012 which concluded that there had been 63 subtropical cyclones in the southern Atlantic between 1957 and 2007. During January 2009, a subtropical storm developed over the basin, before a tropical storm developed during March 2010 and was named Nita by Brazilian public and private weather services. During 2011, the Brazilian Navy Hydrographic Center started to assign names to tropical and subtropical cyclones to develop within its area of responsibility to the west of 20 degrees west when they have sustained wind speeds of at least 65 km/h. Known occurrences and impacts. 1991 Angola tropical cyclone. A low-pressure area formed over the Congo Basin on April 9. The next day it moved offshore northern Angola with a curved cloud pattern. It moved westward over an area of warm waters, and the circulation became better defined. According to the United States National Hurricane Center, the system was probably either a tropical depression or a tropical storm at its peak intensity. On April 14, the system rapidly dissipated as it was absorbed into a large squall line. Hurricane Catarina. Hurricane Catarina was an extraordinarily rare tropical cyclone, forming in the southern Atlantic Ocean in March 2004. Just after becoming a hurricane, it hit the southern coast of Brazil in the state of Santa Catarina on the evening of March 28, with winds estimated near 155 km per hour, making it a Category 2 equivalent on the Saffir-Simpson hurricane scale. The cyclone killed 3 to 10 people and caused millions of dollars in damage in Brazil. At the time, the Brazilians were taken completely by surprise, and were initially unwilling to believe that an actual tropical cyclone could have formed in the South Atlantic, despite the insistence of the National Hurricane Center that it was exactly what had happened. Eventually, however, they were convinced, and adopted the previously unofficial name Catarina for the storm, after Santa Catarina State. This event is considered by some meteorologists to be a nearly once-in-a-lifetime occurrence. Tropical storm Anita. On March 8, 2010, a previously extratropical cyclone developed tropical characteristics and was classified as a subtropical cyclone off the coast of southern Brazil. The following day, the United States Naval Research Laboratory began monitoring the system as a system of interest under the designation of 90Q. The National Hurricane Center also began monitoring the system as low SL90. During the afternoon of March 9, the system had attained an intensity of 55 km per hour and a barometric pressure of 1,000 hectopascals. It was declared a tropical storm on March 10 and became extratropical late on March 12. Anita's accumulated cyclone energy was estimated at 2.0525 by the Florida State University. There was no damage associated to the storm, except high sea in the coasts of Rio Grande do Sul and Santa Catarina. Post-mortem, the cyclone was given the name Anita by private and public weather centers from southern Brazil. Subtropical storm Arani. Early on March 14, 2011, the Navy Hydrographic Center, Brazilian Navy, in coordination with the National Institute of Meteorology, were monitoring an organizing area of convection near the southeast coast of Brazil. Later that day, a low-pressure area developed just east of Vitória, Espírito Santo, and by 1200 UTC, the system organized into a subtropical depression located about 140 kilometers east of Campos dos Goitacazes. Guided by a trough and a weak ridge to its north, the system moved slowly southeastward over an area of warm waters, intensifying into a subtropical cyclone Arani on March 15, as named by the Brazilian Navy Hydrographic Center. The storm was classified as subtropical, as the convection was east of the center. On March 16, Arani began experiencing 25 knots of wind shear because another frontal system bumped it from behind. Before it developed into a subtropical cyclone, Arani produced torrential rains over portions of southeastern Brazil, resulting in flash flooding and landslides. Significant damage was reported in portions of Espírito Santo, though specifics are unknown. Increased swells along the coast prompted ocean travel warnings. Subtropical storm Bapo. During February 5, 2015, a subtropical depression developed about 105 miles to the southeast of São Paulo, Brazil. Over the next day, low-level barometricity decreased around the system, as it moved southeastwards away from the Brazilian coast and intensified further. The system was named Bapo by the Brazilian Navy Hydrographic Center during February 6 after it had intensified into a subtropical storm. Over the next couple of days, the system continued to move southeastwards before it transitioned into an extratropical cyclone during February 8. Subtropical storm Carry. On March 10, 2015, the Hydrographic Center of the Brazilian Navy began issuing warnings of Subtropical Depression 3 during early afternoon, while CPTEC already assigned the name Carry for the storm. At 0000 UTC on March 11, the Hydrographic Center of the Brazilian Navy upgraded Carry to a subtropical storm, also assigning a name to it. On March 12, the Brazilian Hydrographic Center downgraded Carry to a subtropical depression, while the CPTEC stated that the storm became a hybrid cyclone. During early afternoon of March 13, the Brazilian Navy declared that Carry became a remnant low. Carry brought heavy rainfall, flooding and landslides to eastern cities of Santa Catarina and Rio Grande do Sul states. Rain totals from 100 mm to 180 mm were observed associated with the storms, and wind topped 75 km/h in Cabo de Santa Marta. A Navy buoy registered a 20 FD wave off the coast of Santa Catarina. Other systems. Pre-2004. According to a presentation at the 6th WMO International Workshop on Tropical Cyclones, satellite imagery from January 1970 showed that a system with an eye wall had developed behind a cold front and that the system needed further analysis to determine if it was tropical or subtropical. On March 27, 1974, a weak area of low pressure that had originated over the Amazon River started to intensify further. Over the next 48 hours, the system quickly developed further and was classified as subtropical, as it developed a banding structure and deep convection near its warm core. On March 29, a northwesterly flow encroached on the system's environment, which caused the system to rapidly move towards 40°S and the cold waters that were present to the south of 40 degrees south. In March 1994, a system that was thought to be weaker than Catarina was spawned but was located over cool and open waters. During 2004, the large-scale conditions over the South Atlantic were more conducive than usual for subtropical or tropical systems, with 4 systems noted. The first possible tropical cyclone developed within a trough of low pressure to the southeast of Salvador, Brazil on January 18. The system subsequently displayed a small central dense overcast and was suspected to be at the peak of its development as either a tropical depression or a tropical storm during the next day. The system was subsequently affected by some strong shear, before it moved inland and weakened along the coast of Brazil before it was last noted during January 21. Within Brazil, the system caused heavy rain and flooding, with a state of emergency declared in Aracaju, after the river overflowed and burst its banks, which flooded homes, destroyed crops and caused parts of the highway to collapse. However, it was noted that not all of the heavy rain and impacts were attributable to the system, as a large monsoon low covered much of Brazil at the time. The second system was a possible hybrid cyclone that developed near southeastern Brazil between March 15–16. Hurricane Catarina was the third system, while the fourth system had a well-defined eye-like structure and formed off the coast of Brazil on May 15, 2004. On February 22, 2006, a baroclinic cyclone intensified quickly and was estimated to have peaked with 1-minute sustained wind speeds of 65 miles/hour, after radar data showed that the system had developed an iron banding. However, there were questions about how tropical the system was, as it did not separate from the westerlies of the baroclinic zone it was in. Between March 11 to 17, 2006, a system with a warm core developed and moved southwards along the South Atlantic zone. 2 subtropical cyclones affected both Uruguay and Rio Grande do Sul state in Brazil. On January 28, 2009, a cold core mid to upper level trough in phase with a low-level warm core low formed a system and moved eastward into the South Atlantic. The storm produced rainfall in 24 hours of 300 millimeters or more in some locations of Rocha and southern Rio Grande do Sul. The weather station owned by Metsul Weather Center in Morro Redondo, southern Brazil, recorded 278.2 millimeters in a 24-hour period. 14 deaths and thousands of evacuees are attributed to the storm, with an emergency declared in 4 cities. It lasted until February 1, when the cyclone became extratropical. On November 16, 2010, a cold core mid to upper level trough in phase with a low-level warm core low formed a system state in Brazil and moved southeastward into the South Atlantic, where it slightly deepened. The system brought locally heavy rains in southern Brazil and northeast of Uruguay that exceeded 200 millimeters in a few hours in some locations of southern Rio Grande do Sul northwest of Pelotas. Damages and flooding were observed in Cerrito, São Lourenço do Sul and Pedro Osorio, Bernardo de Pajas, Department of Cerro Largo and Uruguay recorded 240 millimeters of rain. The subtropical cyclone then became a weak trough on November 19, according to the CPTEC. Between December 23, 2013 and January 24, 2015, the Center for Weather Forecast and Climatic Studies and Navy Hydrography Center monitored 4 subtropical depressions to the south of Rio de Janeiro. The first one lasted until Christmas Day, 2013. 2 subtropical depressions formed in 2014, one in late February 2014 and the other in late March 2014. A fourth one formed in late January 2015. On January 5, 2016, the Hydrographic Center of the Brazilian Navy issued warnings on a subtropical depression that formed east of Vitória, Espírito Santo. On the next day, the system strengthened into a tropical depression, and other agencies considered it as an invest, designating it as 90Q. However, on January 7, the tropical depression dissipated. Storm names. The following names are published by the Brazilian Navy Hydrographic Center and used for named storms that form in the area west of 20th W and south of equator in the South Atlantic Ocean since 2011. Arani is confirmed to be used again in the future after its next 9 names are all used, but it is unclear if those names will be also rotated. Listed by month.